Do you want a total war? Do you want a war more total and radical than anything that we can even yet imagine? Even though this 1943 quote by the chief propagandist for the Nazi Party, Joseph Goebbels, was said after the Blitz in London had ended, it's still an accurate description of how life during the London Blitz would have felt, with every man, woman, and child just as involved and affected by the Second World War as the soldiers on the continent. For 8 months and 5 days between September 7th, 1940, and May 11th, 1941, including a period of 57 consecutive nightly bombing raids, London was subject to aerial attacks by the Nazi German Luftwaffe across almost all areas of the city. Although air raids across the rest of the UK did occur as well, we will be focusing solely on London's experience as the epicenter of these attacks during the Second World War, and how the experience of nightly air raids, sheltering for cover, and an increased sense of unity impacted the culture of the city and the people living there, the legacy of which can still be felt to this day. Before we look at the cultural impact that the bombings had on London, let's first take a look at how the Blitz started to begin with. Following the UK's entry into World War II on September 3rd, 1939, just 2 days after Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party invaded Poland, England began its experience in the war by sending a force of 390,000 soldiers into France to help halt the expansion of Nazi forces across Europe. However, this force was quickly defeated, with German Blitzkrieg (lightning war) strategy completely surrounding the British forces and leaving them stranded on the French beaches of Dunkirk, from which they were evacuated using civilian boats. Following this disastrous start of the war, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party launched what they called Operation Sea Lion, an invasion plan from which they would send German Air Force to destroy the British Air Force, followed by a ground invasion across the Channel. The first part of this plan began in what is now known as the Battle of Britain, the first aerial-only conflict across 3 months in which German Luftwaffe planes engaged with the RAF in order to cripple their defensive capabilities against the invasion. However, due to advanced radar technology the Nazis were unaware of, the RAF was able to repel the Luftwaffe successfully, stopping the majority of damage across the country. Frustrated by this, Hitler postponed Operation Sea Lion, instead opting for a continuous bombing campaign of the UK in order to destroy its industrial capabilities and cultural heritage to help reduce British morale and make a future invasion easier. The UK was also not Hitler's top priority, as he was planning the enormous Operation Barbarossa, a surprise invasion of the Soviet Union with over a million German soldiers taking part. Because of this, the Blitz was more like Hitler's backburner project, something to slowly reduce the fighting capabilities of England until he was ready to make them the focus once more. Thus, as mentioned, beginning on September 7th, 1940, over the course of the next 8 months and 5 days, the city of London was showered with 18,000 tons of munitions, ranging from small 2-pound thermite bombs to 1,000-pound high explosive and bunker busting shells. Although London had experienced limited strategic bombing from Germany in the First World War, the Blitz was unprecedented in its scale for the country, with millions of people being forced to seek shelter each night from air raids. According to Geoffrey Field in the article Nights Underground in Darkest London, the intensity and regularity of the raids on London forced the population to develop new routines, with running from homes to shelters becoming as regular as making morning tea. Following the First World War, London did have a series of purposely made bomb shelters constructed. However, to quote Field again, the inadequacy of existing shelter facilities quickly became evident. Many were overcrowded, poorly lit, cold, wet, and unsanitary, meaning that the most important communal shelters were those in the stations of the London Tube or Underground. This is where the widespread cultural impact of the Blitz can be seen most visibly in London during this time. As you can see in these photos, people who went into these tube stations to shelter from bombs suffered from cramped, hot, and uncomfortable conditions as they were forced to spend their evenings trying to sleep on the ground in the railways. Yet, at the same time, due to all of London being under the same existential threat, this was a period in which people of all backgrounds and all walks of life were unified under a common cause. With an attitude of stoicism, which went on to be known as Blitz spirit, Many people in these shelters went about their days as normally as they could, with talking, teaching, music, and other entertainment being used as a means to keep morale high. According to Theresa Griffin, a woman who was sheltering in the tube around Christmas time, there was a lot of "Keep Up Mother Brown" going on, that's a pub song, and drinking, and Christmas time there's carols and laughing and talking. By the time we'd finished, we didn't even hear what was going on upstairs, which just goes on to show that there were periods where people were trying to keep spirits as high as possible. Of course, these moments of fun and celebration were a shield to help delay thinking about whether or not your house would still be there in the morning, or if your friends and family were still alive. But seeing as there was little else to do other than shelter in place, people made best of what they had. Outside of sheltering in a spirit of stoicism, there was also a culture of collaboration, as over 250,000 people across London volunteered as air raid wardens, firefighters, fire watchers, and those who provided aid to the homeless. This kind of Blitz spirit was, in some part, due to the attitudes displayed by the leader at the time, Winston Churchill, who, through multiple speeches, fostered a spirit of resilience and resistance, using quotes such as "blood, toil, tears, and sweat," "we shall fight on the beaches," and "this was their finest hour." Today, the Blitz and the attitudes of Londoners during the Blitz has become an incredibly important moment in British culture and history, most often seen as a moment of collaboration and strength in the face of such terrifying danger. The ability to keep morale high, work together, and keep their communities safe, and help the soldiers fighting off in Europe are all examples of the kind of total war culture that England took on through most of the Second World War. Yet the Blitz was the most extreme period of this, with a massive portion of the city having to come to the same place every single night. Ultimately, compared to other cities targeted by aerial bombing during the Second World War, such as Warsaw, Stalingrad, Dresden, and Tokyo, London was able to exit the war with about 30% of its infrastructure destroyed in bombing raids, while the other cities mentioned had 85%, 90%, 79%, and 60% of theirs destroyed respectively. Yet that period is still seen today as an example of what Britain can accomplish under extreme odds and with a common goal in mind, something that is inspiring during tense moments in our modern world.